And then secondly, I'm just admitting people from outside of the university into the Teams chat. But if anyone in sort of CTR sort of sees someone waiting to be let in and I haven't done it, feel free to let them in as long as they look like they're honest and trustworthy. And then a third bit of housekeeping is that Matt, you're going to be taking us through Copilot, and what you'd like to do is to ask people just to sign into Copilot, and you've shared the link with me, which I'm now going to share in the chat. Let me just do that. Okay. So I think, famous last word, I managed to log into Copilot. And on the basis of that, I think it must therefore be quite straightforward. But at some point, you'll be getting us to kind of have a go with Copilot. So if in the next sort of 5 minutes or so, people could log into Copilot, that would be really helpful, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jeremy.
Okay, so so welcome to March's meeting of our Population Health and Social Care Group. I've done the housekeeping, and just to say at the outset that we're beginning to look at the programme for 25-26. So we're really interested in any potential topics, and even better, people that come speak about those topics. And very much the aim of the series is to exchange knowledge about what we do in the division and beyond, to build capacity and to develop connections across divisions, centres and other boundaries. And today's talk is very much in that spirit, really. And I'm really pleased to welcome Matthew Mort and Matthew Hayden. On my little notes to self here, it says, do not introduce them as the two Matts. So I hope I've managed to introduce you individually. The Matts are based in the School of Medicine and are doing some really exciting work on thinking about how we develop AI in the workplace. And I have to confess, AI is something this year I've been sort of confronted with in some of the teaching that I do and thinking, well, I don't really know what it is, and I don't really know what I don't know, and I'm really curious. And earlier this week, I was lucky enough to go to a meeting where Matt and Matt were talking about some of the work that they were doing, and I was really inspired and intrigued at the way that they were talking about it and its kind of applications. So we're going to dip our toe into the water today and learn a bit more about AI in the workplace. So thanks very much for coming along today. We really appreciate that. And I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I just start with thanks for including us in this. And I think that mindset of being curious and taking a balanced approach is always good to do. You know, if there's something new and it's a bit scary, I think that can work. So with the Matts, we are called the Matts. A lot of people will say that, so don't worry about that. We're both at my house today, so we don't live together, despite rumours, but that's come up. So with AI, we think there's a lot of hype about AI at the moment. And whilst that may be getting people interested, it could also be a bad thing as well. It can make people a bit scared. They don't know where to start. And I would say that AI is nothing new. We might have been using AI without even knowing it. And that often is the case. I'd say what is the new thing is the pace of development. Like AI can really move rapidly. So I'd say we don't know the Matts now, we don't know everything about AI. And I think that's what part of what this is having a conversation. So around the university, we're having these conversations to sort of inform our understanding and perspectives. But I would say from the conversations we've had, if I think about it, AI is more about mindset than technology. Like it's being curious, giving it a go, trying something different. That's the real sort of barrier to the tech. So just going to move through now. So we're in medical genetics. We've been using machine learning, which is it's like a subfield of AI. It's just predicting from data. you know, house prices on Rightmove, where they predict the value of your house. So they use the size of the house, where it is, how many bedrooms, and make a prediction. So that is just machine learning. And we're into using like chatbots, which is like the ChatGPT for productivity. We feel that's like a really good use of chatbots in this angle, but there's lots of other uses for them as well. So we talked about a conversation, so we do want to sort of hear from you. So like, if you've got a question, you drop it in the chat. But what we're going to do now is AI in the workplace as a topic. Can everyone drop one word about that they feel relates to AI and the workplace into the chat now? And we'll just see we'll do a temperature test, see what people are thinking. So it can be anything. Just helpful. We've got surveillance, yeah. Efficiency. That's the sort of productivity word, isn't it? Minefield, yeah. We're getting lots of pings. This is good. Unknown, yeah. It can be scary if it's unknown. Anything else coming through? Daunting. So it sounds like we've got a bit of a balance. The new calculator. So when you say calculator, I think a tool like AI is an assistant. It's not going to be replacing people. Data privacy, that's a really important one. Data governance, looking after our data. Timeliness, you know, is it in time to sort of save some money perhaps? I don't know. Automate authorization, so in workplace processes, maybe we can do things better. We think that AI should be used to sort of replace the manual grind and not be taking away the sort of human-centric tasks that are really important. So it's like an assistant. Value adding, that's good. So I'll move on now. So when we're talking about chatbots, just so we get on the same ethical use, really important. So we get on the same page, we're talking about like the ChatGPT, which is a gateway to chatting with your computer in just natural language. Because AI is such a massive field, that's what we're going to sort of focus on for this session. And there's two types of these chatbots. You've got online chatbots, so that would be ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and other tools. So they work in the cloud on some server somewhere, and these could be really powerful, but they might be transmitting data to a remote server. So that's something to be aware of. You should also be aware of that there's offline chatbots, and this is where you can use these systems on your own machines. You download the model and you can run it locally, and that can avoid some of the security issues. So it doesn't mean you have to start using offline chatbots, but it means you should be aware that that exists, I think. So I'll just take you through in the workplace setting. So AI really is all about the data. AI is nothing without data. So in a work setting for Cardiff University, we're taking this sort of double belts and braces approach. So you can use Copilot, so use an approved tool, which is Copilot, for any work tasks now, and don't enter any sensitive data like C1 or C2 information into there. You could put other data in that's work related as long as it's not C1 or C2. This is looking at getting amended with the security handling policy, but for the moment, that's the approach we're taking. And that's just so we can protect our data. Because Copilot is a Microsoft product and there has been issues with chatbots in the past. To reiterate that, so if you're using a tool, that's just on the internet somewhere, you don't know how your data's being used, you don't know what's happening to your data. And there's been like a case where someone in Cardiff Uni, they'd written a book, they sent chapters for review to an AI chatbot, and bits of that book appeared on the internet. So I'm not saying that's what will happen, but there's always that risk. So that's why we've got to use an approved tool. Don't just find some link on the internet and start clicking away with all your private information. So we said AI is all about the data. So these chatbots, they use training data. And why we need to know what their training data contains is because it's really important, because that guides the output that chatbot's going to give us. So chatbots use what's called as a large language model, LLM. And you might hear that term, and that's just the brain of the chatbot. It's not actually intelligent, it's just predicting the next word in a sentence. So like the cat sat on the, what would the next word be? So it looks in its training data and it uses probabilities to predict the next word in the sentence. So whilst some of these companies are not transparent with what training data they have, we know from an older version of ChatGPT what that contained. And we think new ones are similar, but they might have some extra stuff. So to point this out, so this version of ChatGPT it was mainly in English. So think of the bias that's going to have in your data set. You're cutting out all the information online that is in foreign languages. Wikipedia pages make 3%. It's also got a big chunk of books, fiction and non-fiction. And then it's got lots of pages scraped from the web. Most of it, 80% odd, will be just scraped from the web. And that includes like Reddit posts. So these are posts that have 3 or more upvotes. They might not have factual information in there. It's all about trying to model language rather than collect information. And that's sort of a side product of a large language model. So that's something to be aware of. When you're asking a chatbot questions, you've got to think what's in its training data, what has it seen, because that will guide its output. So now we do believe in this like learn by doing. And we think if you want to improve your productivity, you've just got to be curious. You've got to experiment and try different things. So we're going to move to a task now. So you'll have to log into Copilot. And we want you to try this, explain it like I'm 5. And the abbreviation of that is ELI5. And this just simplifies complicated topics to explain to a 5-year-old. So exactly what it does on what it says, that's what we're doing. And it tries to avoid jargon. So we want you to go into Copilot now and pick any topic you like, but preferably something you know about. So then you can fact check this chatbot and you say, explain, I don't know, it could be anything, cybersecurity, like I'm 5. It could be explain clinical trials, like I'm 5. And then we've got another prompt for you to try, which is just explain clinical trials with increasing complexity over 3 paragraphs. And that's a different variation on the same thing. So if everyone goes into Copilot now and gives that a go, I'm just putting, this is exercise 3 on that link I've sent if you want to copy and paste rather than type in, but this is a short prompt. And a prompt is just what we're typing into the chatbot. And then if people sort of post in the chat what they've tried or what the output was, someone's done climate change. I'm just reading that. Imagine Earth is like a big cozy blanket that keeps us warm. This blanket is made of gases in the air. I like that one. Explain learning about AI like I'm 5. It often uses Lego to do these analogies, is what we've noticed. The insulin one looks good. I mean, fact check these. We're not saying AI is always right. It's about using something you know about. I think the cancer screening one looks, like a good way to explain it. I never thought of weather as being the mood of the sky, so. So it can be really useful if you could move it into a different domain to sort of give this a go, and you can start off at this level and then build it up. It can get you thinking about ideas in a different way. What about synthetic data? That's interesting. Does anyone add an example where it's sort of not done an accurate description in a way? Has anyone got any questions about anything to do with using Copilot or this task? If they just drop them now and then we'll sort of move on. Yep, Julia.
Sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to put it in the chat. I was just wondering, can you put in whole text? You know, quite often the task that we have to do is to put something in a lay summary, which is supposed to have the average reading age of 10 or something. So could you put a whole text, say, 5 paragraphs of text into it and ask it to give it to you as an average reading age of 10?
Yeah, so you could do that. You could put in a chunk of text. So you put your prompt first, and that might be like, can you convert this into, whatever it is, drop the text in after, and then it'll give you that back. Okay. Another way is to review your text. Say you've done a lay summary. Yeah. You could say, please review my lay summary. Do you think this would be suitable for X audience or whatever it is?
Okay.
So there's reviewing and also generating.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
I'm sure has everyone logged into Copilot okay? Just double checking. If you haven't, just let me know.
If anyone needs me to share the web address, I can. Could I just ask you a question, Matt? Bill, yeah. But not what Julia asked there. I was just sort of trying to get my head around what are the policies of journals around the use of AI? So like if you're kind of writing a lay abstract, whether journals say, well, we think that's a good idea that you use a chatbot to help you make it more accessible, or we don't think it's a good idea, or we allow it, or we don't allow it, or just what the kind of the general direction is in terms of what journals are looking for.
What we've noticed is, and I don't want to speak for all journals, but we've done some work with Wiley, and they're quite encouraging of AI as long as it's in sort of a responsible way. So if you reviewed your abstract using AI, no problems with that, and you could say, this is a sort of target journal. Can you make my article suitable for that? You could also put in examples. You could say, I want to sort of take this format for my abstract. So there's different ways to use it. Normally it wouldn't be just generate my abstract from scratch, but you could try that. It might not work that well, but it's more in the reviewing sense. But I think from what we've seen, they're quite pro it in a way that I wouldn't have expected, perhaps.
Oh, that's really helpful. Thank you.
That's okay. Have we got any more questions before we move on? Or there, yep.
If you wanted to get it to review something, can you just type that, or do you have to use specific prompts? Or like, do you have to have specific commands, or can you just write what you want?
You can write it in natural language. So when these are like suggested prompts, and part of that is being explaining your context and what you're actually wanting from the chatbot. So you can't sort of assume it'll know. So to give you an example, like when we're doing the workshops, we might do one where an AI can draw images, and we'll say like, draw a dog. and they'll put that in, and they'll get an image of a dog back, and they'll say, "That's not the dog I wanted. I wanted a black dog running through a field." Well, I said, "What did you type? Draw a dog." So it's about giving it context. You say, "I want to review this text for X, Y, and Z for this purpose." You can attach a document with Copilot as well, so you can sort of just add it in. But there is a size limit on that, so sometimes you have to just copy and paste from the document into the chatbot.
Haley, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes. Are you saying that you should only use specific AI programs? You know, for example, the one that we've just used now, it's been okayed by the Cardiff University.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So
So
I'm not
how do
saying
they?
only Copilot though.
Yeah.
So
How do you know which is okay to use? You know, are you saying that some are biased? You know, so the training data behind some AI packages are biased, possibly.
I would say all AI packages are biased because of the training data. Some maybe more so than others. So it's important to know about that. But I'm saying, in a work perspective, if you're putting your data into some tool you find on the internet, they do use that data often, and they might use it to train new models. Imagine you had a new idea and you put it into a tool online, and then your new idea could actually be passed to someone else. It could go into that training data and be passed out to someone else, like an IP issue. You know, you want to own your own IP, and if you put it into some tool somewhere, that could be a disclosure. It could be an IP issue. So yes, definitely, to stay safe, use an IT approved tool. And there's lots of sort of different versions of AI tools, but in terms of chatbots, Copilot is what is approved.
How do you approve it? How does the university approve it? For example, is what are they looking for in an AI tool?
The main thing they're looking at is, in compliance and risk, that data governance. What is happening with your data? How is it being used? And who has access to it? The sort of main themes. So they won't be looking from is this biased? They're more looking, is my data safe? So you've kind of got to do an assessment of other parts of this. They're looking at it from that perspective.
Thank you.
Is my data safe? Yep, Jeremy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I sort of jumping ahead a little bit, maybe what we'll be doing after this meeting is maybe kind of linking and sharing some of the information from the university, so we've got sort of path-based people can follow. I was going to say that I've tried using ChatGPT. I find it really valuable when trying to find people to review academic journal articles. So not sharing anything from the paper itself, but just saying, find me people that do research on X. And then actually it came up with some really good suggestions of people who I then said, do I think they're a good fit? Yeah, they are. And I found that you get quite a good hit rate then, because you're targeting people that have got expertise and an interest in the topic, and it's easy to find them than going through Google Scholar, you know.
Yeah, no, that would be responsible then. Just think, is my data safe is a question I'm always asking, and for that there's no issue there. I think we'll move on now, just so we've got a lot of content to cover, and Matt's going to talk about some of the issues we need to be thinking about before we do another exercise.
Hi, so as you're probably aware, I'm also Matt. So I'm just going to quickly look at this study that was in the Harvard Business Review, and they were looking at how AI is actually being used in the workplace. They identified 6 main areas, and that's content creation and editing, technical assistance and troubleshooting, personal and professional support, learning and education, hobbies and recreation, and research, analysis, and decision making. So I can barely read it, but if you want to pop 1 to 100, oh, I can see better there. If you want to pop 1 to 100 in the chat, we'll see of the 100 examples they gave, what AI is being used for.
You can do it at random, it doesn't have to be.
It's just a random number between 1 and 100.
There's one that always comes up, and we're wondering if it'll happen today.
What's that? Editing text, really useful for sort of going over what you've written, not just spell checking, but seeing if you can do it better. Oh God, hang on. 63, we've got interpreting song lyrics. That's quite useful. I mean, that sort of thing for poetry, getting extra insight into written words, what could be the inner meaning. 34, explaining technical documents, really useful for things like SOPs. If you need things, explained to you in a more approachable manner, even something like you've just bought a vacuum cleaner and you don't know what the hell they're talking about, you could just put the PDF into your chatbot and say, can you please explain this to me much easier? 53, we'll make this the last one. Career advice. I mean, that's a good one. You can, for example, put in your CV and ask, where do I go from here? What do you recommend that this CV requires? Can you specify any jobs that you think I should be going for based on the information that I've provided you? So, as Matt just said, one of the things that's really important is, why do we need to talk about AI? And there are four main things that we've sort of brought up today that we can quickly go over. The first of all, as has been spoken about, is safeguarding and data protection. And you've got to remember that what you put into these chatbots doesn't go out. So it's almost like you've made that, if you put something on Facebook, it's there for everyone to see. It's the same with the chatbot. It's stored on their servers. That data has been released from you to them. So think before you share any sensitive data. Shadow AI is something I think the BBC were talking about almost a month ago now, is when you tell people that they can't use AI in the workplace and people will agree and say, absolutely, we won't use it. And then they'll go away and start using it behind your back very quietly. Well, you can't regulate that. So you need to think about how you're regulating AI in the workplace and not driving people away to do it in dark corners of the office and you don't know exactly what they're putting into these chatbots. And could you be jeopardizing IP and spin out potential? I mean, that's quite possible if you're putting your latest research in there, something that you don't know, you don't want your competitors to know about, anything business sensitive. Yeah, it's quite feasible that you could be jeopardizing potential spin-outs and your IP by putting it into these chatbots. Another thing that comes up quite frequently in the university is core skills retention, because if you don't use those core skills, the chances are that they're going to sort of wither and die. Creative problem solving requires practice, not shortcuts. So you really need to keep engaging with these core skills. You need to be using these abilities, otherwise you'll forget all about them. And the irony is that we always say you must check what comes out of these chatbots. You do not take its word as the law, as we're about to say. And you need expertise to be able to do that. So you need to develop your core skills to actually deal with what's coming out of the chatbots so you can assess it correctly. Misinformation is a huge thing at the moment. AI supercharges the spread of convincing falsehoods at an unprecedented scale. We have always had propaganda, misinformation, and liars. But AI can do this really quickly, and it can actually make up fake stories very quickly and disseminate them into the public incredibly quickly. So it's quite scary. So you need to develop this sort of critical literacy. You need to source, verify, and question all the information that comes out of these chatbots. You need to do lateral reading. It's a really important thing to get across to students as well. We used to say, don't trust everything you see on the internet. Now it's don't trust everything that comes out of a chatbot. A big problem of this is the liar's dividend. And that's not that an AI could make such a convincing picture or fake news that everyone would believe it. It's that AI is making people question everything. So maybe real facts and actual pictures, people might not believe them anymore because of the spread of misinformation that comes out via AI. Hallucinations is something that you've probably heard about quite a bit. And that's nice PR speak for when the AI comes out with nonsense, when it talks rubbish, it gets it wrong. And they call these hallucinations because it's better than admitting, yeah, it gets it wrong every now and again. AI will confidently present fiction as fact, and this is down to a lot of the times the training data that Matt spoke about earlier. For example, we've seen in training data, we saw, I think last year, a funny one was people were saying that they were putting in, how do I improve the consistency of my pizza into AI? And the AI was saying, oh, that's simple. You just put glue in it. Well, that's because someone was messing around and put this sort of thing into Reddit. Reddit found its way into the training data, so the AI regurgitated it. Fiction as fact. And we've got to get used to the idea that just because the AI has said it does not necessarily mean to say that it is true. So those are just 4 things that we think that you need to be aware of. There are other things. You should look into the environmental costs associated with using AI, developmental costs, huge amount of money in this, psychological impact. How does using an AI affect you? I mean, it can have positive benefits, but what if it's negative reinforcement? Inflated expectations. There's a heck of a lot of hype about these things. We think AI is a really useful tool. All these chatbots are incredibly handy, but the hype that they're saying that, you know, they'll be taking over the world before too much longer, it's mainly nonsense, and it sort of denigrates what we think is a really useful tool anyway. Copyright infringements, we hear a lot of it from people who are interested in art. They are disgusted about the fact that these, in the training data, are lots of people's pictures and photos that these big companies may have obtained illegally. You know, they've been taking in people's short stories, they're combing the web for information. Do they have the right for this information? And there's been a lot of trouble in the last year over this sort of topic. So one of the things that we try to get across to people is that you need to use AI responsibly. And what we mean by that, well, you've got to have transparency and accountability. A lot of these online AIs are black boxes. You don't know what goes on under the hood. So if you're using AI, you need to know about it. There needs to be accountability. You know, there's a human in charge. Where does the buck stop? Data privacy and protection, we've covered that. Human oversight, as we've said, that humans are in charge of the AI. You just don't let it run amok. We've got to take responsibility for what it's coming out with. Bias mitigation and alignment with values. Data sets can be biased. I mean, if you think of human literature and the history of humanity, it ends up in these data sets, and we haven't always been incredibly nice to one another. So yes, you are going to get biases in these data sets, and you've got to make sure that these data sets align with your values if you're going to use them. Continuous monitoring, ordering, improvement. I mean, that's what we should be doing anyway with all technology. And education and literacy, if we haven't plugged it already, we do a workshop on this. It's 4 hours in the afternoon, and this is a mere snippet of the information that's available there, because we believe that education on AI is incredibly important, which is what we're trying to get across this morning. Very quickly, I'm afraid. But if you want more information, if you look on the internet, we do have a course. It's 4 hours. I think the next one is the 1st of April, and we've got one following that up in May. The other thing we talk about a lot is co-creation. You work with the AI. You know, it's not leading you around by the nose. You're working with it. So AI outputs reflect statistical consensus rather than original thinking. They show what's common, not what's groundbreaking. So they often avoid specialist expertise as it plays it safe. It gets the average information. It wants to answer your question accurately, so it doesn't always go out on a limb with the most cutting edge information. So you need to sort of milk it a little bit more. You need to use the right sort of language to get what you want out of these chatbots. So be selective and persistent. You refine your prompts until you get results that match your expectations. And how is this done? It's done with prompt engineering. You've probably heard a lot about that. It's a bit of a buzzword. And what is it? It's about asking better questions of the AI. It's the skill of crafting clear instructions for the AI tools to get the results you want. So it's structuring your request with the right context, constraints, and examples so the AI understands exactly what you need. And as has been said a lot, a common phrase, garbage in, garbage out. think what you're asking of the AI. And there's this really great tweet that I found last year that I love. Someone has posted saying, sometimes in the process of writing a good enough prompt for ChatGPT, I end up solving my own problem without even needing to submit it. And someone replied to that, AI folks have now discovered thinking. Well, that's correct. I mean, if you phrase your question correctly, if you think about it, then the answer can sometimes almost fall off your tongue. And so we're going to have another example here where you can have a little bit of a play around. This is role prompting, and this is a technique that you will find in prompt engineering to get the best answers. And the basic way to explain this is, for example, if you wanted information on chemistry, you could ask the chatbot, well, as a chemist, because if you do that, it sort of narrows the frame of reference. It knows you're talking about chemistry or engineering or anything you want to ask about it. So you ask it to take on the role before you question it. So role prompting is when you ask an AI to respond as if it were a specific type of character. It shapes the AI's output to match the expertise level, terminology, and perspective you need. So here are 2 examples. First of all, you are a medical professional. Reply to the statement, my hemorrhoids are bothering me. Second of all, you are a comedian. Reply to the statement, my hemorrhoids are bothering me. So what we're doing there is you should get 2, you would hope, completely different answers there, depending on the sense of humor that your medical practitioner has. So if you want to try typing in one of those or both, you should be able to see what a difference role prompting can make in the answer you will get out of these chatbots. Oh, and feel free to share them. We do like a good hemorrhoid joke. We've seen quite a few.
We did before where we would say you are a specific comedian, but Copilot's sort of not happy with that anymore. So we've had to go really generic. You are a comedian, but you can try saying, you know, you are Peter Kay, the comedian. Reply to the statement.
Well, Billy Connolly is always good for a laugh.
I think this does highlight how important context is when you're asking questions. And that's something we can forget about, and we sort of think that we've sort of given that context. But that is the main thing about prompt engineering, which is basically asking better questions. It's giving the full situation, the full context, the output that you want, what you actually want the AI to do. You can't really assume. You can use this role prompting for lots of things. Like we've got websites with users. We say, like, you're a user of our product. Can you review this web page and give me a suggested changes I should make to make it clearer? So you can use this personas or roles in lots of different ways to test your writing as well. You know, give me this perspective of a student or a staff member in this area. I'm just reading the chat now.
We get laughter is the best medicine coming up a lot in these responses, and I would imagine some sort of topical lotion would actually be the best medicine.
I mean, that's the thing. If your doctor gave you a joke, that would be wrong. So that shows you how like context is so important. But when you're asking it to be a comedian, it's fine.
Obviously, with the doctor, you're expecting more medical terminology than humor.
Yeah.
I don't mind my doctor joking a little bit.
I don't know. When you're thinking about what questions you're going to type in, you can use this role prompting to give it a context. And it actually does improve the output, because a large language models, the engine for these chatbots are like probability machines. So if you give it context, you're narrowing down that probability space where it's looking for answers.
Someone's mentioned the dentist. I thought they were sitting the wrong way up in the chair. So I think we'd, on that cheerful note, better move on and wrap up the presentation. So we like at the end to sort of, we want you to think about AI and how you're using AI. And we say that people-focused AI requires thought. So consider any new employee or new operating procedure. Would you hand over the keys to the business straight away, or dive in with an untested policy or procedure? You just need to keep your wits about you when you're using these machines, and be careful what you ask it to do, be careful what information you put into it, and be careful how well you regard the information that comes out of it. So if you can take questions here, or...
Super, thank you. I'm sure there'll be questions and comments, so I'll open the floor to any questions. Hayley, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, sort of, how does Cardiff University decide on which AI tools that we should be using? You know, because you've said to use Copilot. How is it decided? Is it because there's one that's, you know, that you've decided that you want to use, or is it that because other universities are using them? Is there a particular person or department that decides that?
It's multiple teams in like professional services, and they are looking at from that compliance and risk angle and an IT angle in terms of infrastructure. So what that means is that Copilot is not necessarily the best AI tool out there, but it's sort of, they think like, is it going to integrate well with our existing systems? Is our data safe? And those are the main, and the price as well, you know.
Yeah.
They do investigate other tools. So they've investigated Google's Gemini, they've investigated other AI platforms, but Copilot is included as part of Office 365, which gives it a big advantage because we've already got that. So that's kind of one of the other things. So they're not necessarily looking at a bias, you know, how good is the tool?
Yeah.
Is it designed ethically, or like these type of questions? It's more from risk.
Yeah.
Is our data safe, and integration, and price?
I was wondering, Matt, did you want to stop sharing your screen? And then, so we've got a few people dotted around the screen who I think got some questions. So Julia and then Claire.
Can I be cheeky and ask two? I wanted to I wanted to know if you can use it to generate meeting notes. So could you ask it to listen in and then generate your meeting notes at the end of your meeting? But also, who decided what systems would feed in? As you say, you're only good as the data that's feeding the system. So who decided that it was Reddit, for instance? And is there any danger that there might be some of the, you know, less scrupulous social media that we know about, which is giving us false information being integrated into these systems, so that none of us believe the AI that we're fed in the future?
Well, the main part, the second part, I'll deal with that. But if you think about when they're doing the language model that is the engine of a chatbot, that purpose is to understand language. And that might be like formal language, slang language, whatever. So that training data was for that sort of perspective, not necessarily as like a data source. So then chatbots and large language models were better than what they expected. So actually they can answer things that they didn't really expect the system to be able to do. So it means it's something to be aware of, that it's actually a language model and the data it's using might drive those answers. But they are working on that as well. There's so much work going in this area that they know about those issues, and That's why they might have picked that training data at that point. But if they were redoing the training today, it would change definitely. And I've got a video of doing the meeting notes. I'll just show that to you now. So we're going to start sharing the screen again. Yeah. Fast through at rapid rate. So I don't know if can you all see that, guys?
Yeah.
So Matt, if you click play. So what you do is you go into your Teams meeting, you would start transcription. And that just gives you a transcript of the meeting. You probably already used this function before. So me and Matt are having a meeting about our new office. We're talking. He's always laughing on the calls. And then after the meeting, you get a Word document, which is called transcript. You open that document up and you'll have to copy and paste that into Copilot, but use a prompt. Before you type that in, you type in the prompt first, which is like, please summarize the following meeting transcript, focus on key points discussed, decisions made, action items, and any important deadlines. You know, I don't want it more than 200 words. So you type that in, that you can be different to that, but that's one we use. You then paste in that transcript from the Word document. We're doing that now on the screen. So we're pasting that transcript.
Can I just check, Matt? I can't see.
Oh, you can't see the.
It says the video could not be played because it was either not found or you do not have access to it.
I have that too, Jeremy.
Oh, it might be because we haven't shared the video, and it's so I'll just talk you through it then without you being able to see. Sorry about that, but I can share the link with you. Basically, in your Teams meeting, because we don't have Teams Premium, this is using the free version we've all got. You go start transcript, and then you'll get that box down the side doing the meeting transcript. Then at the end of the meeting, you'll have a Word document that's got all the full transcript in. So what you do is you go into Copilot and you type a prompt, which is that question, and it's something like this: please summarize the following meeting transcript. And then you can add in extra stuff to that prompt. And we say, focus on key points discussed, decisions made, action items, and any important deadlines mentioned. Ensure the summary is clear, concise, and no longer than 200 words. I can share that prompt with you, so you'd have to remember it. You then copy and paste from that transcript file, the Word document, the meeting transcript. So it's just like Matt said that, Matt said this. And then it'll do some nice notes. So I can see the notes, so you can't, but it says like key points discussed. Always check those. If the meeting is confidential, obviously you wouldn't be able to do this at the moment. But if you check it and if you're transparent and you say, I used AI to generate the notes. If you spot any errors, let me know. I have reviewed them or whatever you've done. That's one way you can do it, Julia. I'll share that with you, and I think it's on the link, the GitHub link. It should be down at the bottom. I think there's an exercise where it describes that in detail.
When you question the security and the confidentiality, say we were discussing, I don't know, something in a trial that you might think is confidential, we very often type up meeting notes and send minutes around anyway by email. Is it any less secure than email?
So with compliance and risk, their policy has not been updated yet. So because we've got to stick to the policy, I would say it was as secure, but the policy doesn't allow for it at the moment. And this week, they're actually going to be amending it, hopefully, so that we can put C1 and C2 into Copilot, not into any old tool. It's got to be specific tools that are approved for use. But that's not at the moment. At the moment, don't put C1, C2 into Copilot.
Okay, thanks. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a very similar question because I wanted to know if it could do meeting minutes. But then I was also thinking about, yeah, are our trial meetings, would they be in the classification that we couldn't put them into Copilot? So I think you're saying we probably can't at the minute. But so does that also mean that we can't, even with Copilot, we can't put in like a paper that we've drafted and we kind of want to review or get an abstract written of? Can we still, I know, appreciate we can't do that on like ChatGPT. Can we still not do that on Copilot as well? Because that might be shared with other people then.
That with Copilot, they say they don't use your data for training other models, so it should be safe. But definitely, if you're using free tools, they want your data and they need it to build better tools. The restrictions, like often people will not include anything that's the C1, C2 bits of the meeting, and they'll get AI to do the rest. So I would say just be sensible. If it's like super confidential, I wouldn't put it anywhere. But if it's something that's not C1 and not C2, it's fine. But once we amend this policy, these rules, that will mean that we can put C1 and C2 into Copilot if that becomes an appropriate use. So that will be assessed, and that will come out then. But
and
that's why it's,
you'll let Jeremy know if that happens so that we all know.
Yes, hopefully that should happen very soon, and that will sort of be empowering for people in the workplace to make the most of these tools, because a lot of us will have C1, C2 that are in these documents. So we may be a bit confused what I can put in and what I can't.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And you mentioned there that the Copilot doesn't kind of train itself on the data you put in, or it doesn't. So that's an important aspect of its security.
Yeah, if you're using any tools and you see an option in general now where it says, don't use my data for training, always tick that option, don't use my data for training. If you're using a ChatGPT or whatever. But Copilot, yes, it won't be doing that.
Okay. And I'm afraid the clock is a little bit against us, which is kind of good in a way because people have had lots of questions and you've sort of stimulated lots of thinking. There's just one question that's come out from the chat from a couple of people, which is around generating AI images. Someone was asking if there are any IP issues. How do you cite AI generated issues? And someone was also asking, is there an approved tool in the university for generating AI images?
Matt, do you want to handle this? I'm passing it to Matt.
I would say that you're probably best because the university has chosen Copilot, that you stick to Copilot for image generation. It's getting better. I don't know whether you saw a paper that came out about 6 months ago. It was showing an anatomical image of a rat that somebody asked Copilot to generate, and it was just comical. I won't describe what was the biggest feature on it, but yeah, it wasn't very anatomically correct. So they're not great at the moment. I think things like ChatGPT, Google are making a lot better progress than Copilot. But again, going with what Matt said, I would only use Copilot for generating the images. I'm not sure about citation.
With Copilot, the terms and conditions are, they're saying that you will own the IP from things you generate. But there is a grey area to that, is that two people could be using Copilot and generate very similar outputs, and then who would own the IP? So this is a sort of issue that Microsoft have addressed by saying they'll pay for you to go to court and have that legal battle, but it's something to be aware of. That's the right one. So for technical drawings, and if you've got words in there, AI is not going to be great for that type of thing, but it can still generate realistic images using software. And I said, if you're really into images, you can do that locally as well, where you download these models if that's sort of, you're doing that in a high throughput way, it's just something to be aware of.
Great,
I hope
thank
that
you.
answered the question.
So we could probably spend another hour discussing this, but I'm afraid the clock's beaten us. I'd like to say a big thank you, Matt and Matt. It's been really fascinating, and I think we'll all really be grateful and appreciative of the way that you've kind of taken us through a quite an unfamiliar topic in a way that feels accessible, and the way that you've kind of covered the different aspects of it and how it sits within a broader way of working. That for me has been really exciting, and I sort of certainly feel a bit more confident about some of the key principles that we probably need to be thinking about when we're using it in whatever way. I'm almost certain that colleagues in the Centre for Trials Research will be keen to find out more and come along to your training, and we'll obviously keep an eye on the evolving kind of guidance from the university. So thank you again. We really appreciate your time and for condensing a lot of information into a really succinct and engaging talk. Thanks to everyone for coming along today. And just to say finally that our next meeting is on Wednesday, the 16th of April, 2 p.m. Until 3 p.m. on Teams. And we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everyone, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.